I started practicing in 1989, and in 2002 I mysteriously gained knowledge of Kriya Yoga. When the Creator created the universe, knowledge of it emerged, along with energy and information. I prayed day and night for this knowledge to be passed on to me. I reached out to Babaji and Satya Sai Baba. At that time, they were two separate beings to me, not one whole. I then asked myself, what is the foundation of all this? Intellectually, I naturally understood. Clearly, it is the Creator, but how could I reach Him? I needed to choose a method and direction. Kriya is an action that we perform with full awareness. However, this alone does not make us Kriya yogis. Kriya itself is effective, but this simple psychophysical method requires a great deal of attention because it is a science. The Kriya method is particularly interesting because it encompasses all aspects of the system. Yoga is divided into 8 stages: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. 8 stages. Those who practice Kriya are familiar with this. For those who don't, I can briefly explain that yama and niyama refer to ethical principles and proper conduct, as well as prohibitions against harmful actions. Vyayama, or asana, refers to the correct positioning of the body in space, which a person maintains in consideration of their inner work. Asanas are connected to our psychophysical system, which we call pranayama. Pranayama involves the conscious effort to retain prana, the life force, and control the quality of energy. Next, we have pratyahara. This is the withdrawal of the 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. We turn them off. I will explain why later. Then we move on to dharana, which is concentration. After that comes dhyana, or meditation. Finally, there is samadhi. These are the 8 levels that Kriya Siddha Patanjali provided to help people understand Kriya Yoga. He called it Kriya Yoga. However, those primarily engaged in yoga know that there are 8 stages in Raja Yoga. So why do I say that there are 8 stages in Kriya Yoga? Because Kriya is essentially unifying, forming the foundation of Raja Yoga and representing its highest stage. If we talk about Kriya as a form of purification, there is a type of yoga like Kriya Yoga that involves purification. Various forms of purification occur, such as bandhas and pranayamas, which cleanse the body. These are elements of Hatha Yoga. However, we are not discussing Kriya in that sense now. We are talking about Kriya Babaji. We are discussing Kriya Babaji as taught by Lahiri Mahasaya in the Yogananda Yukteswar-Giri lineage. This is a different approach. Babaji himself created this direction with the aim of rapidly evolving human consciousness. Therefore, we consider the question of whether Kriya is a method of rapid evolution, which translates as an action performed with full awareness at various stages on the path to realization. Thus, we view Kriya Yoga as a separate method. Unfortunately, this distinction is necessary because people often get confused. So there is the cleansing Kriya, which is an element of Hatha Yoga or Raja Yoga, and then there is Kriya Babaji. I don't even specify Kriya Yoga. It is understood that it is a form of yoga. In general, yoga is translated as, many people mistakenly believe that there is only one type of yoga. When they picture someone sitting in asanas or various poses, they perceive yoga in a limited way, which is not entirely correct. In translation, yoga means reunification with the higher self. But what does the higher mean to us? What does the term higher refer to? It is the higher self. Some people refer to it as the creator or the primordial source, while yogis call it the higher self, the super self, or the superconscious. When we understand that our goal is to reach the higher self, this process is called yoga. However, yoga can also be translated differently. It is not a literal translation, rather, it is perceived as union. It is like a principle. Changes occurred over time, resulting in the union of what? Consciousness and the superconscious. For example, the soul and the body. The level of the mind and bodily consciousness, or simply the mind and the supermind. When I gesture here, I mean something elevated, so yoga is not just unity. Yoga is reunification. In Sanskrit, the prefix re means that, or higher. In other words, what you are doing can be perfected if you approach the matter consciously. By applying the technologies of Kriya Yoga, you have the opportunity to elevate your practice to the highest level. Everyone has the potential to do this. Kriya is an action performed in full awareness, but this alone does not make us Kriya yogis. Kriya itself is quite effective, but this simple psychophysical method requires a great deal of attention, as it is a science. Here, we connect with what relates to our body. We have a brain. I hope everyone does. We also have interhemispheric connections, a spine, a spinal cord, and a center, the medulla oblongata, along with body parts, organs, and systems. When we touch upon the aspect of Kriya Yoga, we approach a science that may seem to be knowledge about human beings, knowledge of how we originated, of where the elements that formed our bodies came from, and of where the energies that created these elements originated. This is all Kriya. Essentially, we are working with an inverted tree. This is a Vedic symbol. The tree is turned upside down, with its branches, fruits, and flowers in the world, and its roots in the heavens. Our roots come from the heavens. Those who practice Kriya understand that their roots are heavenly. They understand how they came into being, and how their bodies continuously receive the elements that are specifically given to them in life. Otherwise, how can we understand that we are always in this body? Our atoms vibrate constantly. Our molecules and cells do not mutate. They are held together by something or someone, maintaining their intended form. We do not disintegrate or scatter. Someone is taking care of this. Every living being is under the divine gaze. In the modern world, this includes every living creature, starting with plants. Although we might not consider a stone to be a living being, the Atma is present in it too, albeit in a very distant form. I will mention this as an example later. This extends from plants, which are more or less alive to us, even though they are very slow, to the angelic level and human beings. Angels are also present in the human body, not as separate beings, but as a level of consciousness. This means holiness, purity, intention, and thoughts. All of these qualities are present in plants and in the animal kingdom. We then move on to insects and so on, encompassing the entire gradation of the animal kingdom, everything that is alive, up to the human level, and finally the angelic level. The higher self holds all of this in its consciousness every second, every moment. Can you imagine the kind of meditation that takes place? There are 8.4 million species of living creatures. Each of these species has its own subspecies as well. Just think about how much is present on Earth and how it is all being sustained. The number I mentioned is not definitive, as there are actually many more species. It's just our general understanding of what we know. There are things we don't know, parallel worlds and other levels of consciousness, for example, and all of this is upheld by the Creator. So Kriya is a science that enables people to understand the laws of the universe by understanding themselves, by using the body as a temple. Notice that I refer to the body as a temple. Why? Because we should treat our bodies as if we have entered a temple. When a person enters a temple, they do not behave as they please. They are humble, they respect the inner space. They connect with it, and they understand that one must act wisely and regard everything as sacred. We should have exactly the same attitude towards our body, if not a more responsible one. When we live in this body, we have the opportunity to realize our potential and attain the happiness that everyone dreams of. Outside of the body, this is impossible. Therefore, the science of Kriya enables a person to understand how to achieve happiness and perfection. This is not achieved within the confines of the mind, but within the realm of consciousness. When we practice, we learn to control our mind, our breath, and our nutrition. These three aspects form the foundation of our initial practice. If our thoughts are incorrect, we will face difficulties because thoughts are material. If we breathe incorrectly, we will have issues with our bioenergetics due to a lack of energy. Pranayama provides this energy, allowing for better absorption of oxygen and prana, or the life force. Poor eating habits also cause our life forces to dissipate, because removing toxins and waste from the body requires more energy, which is more taxing, and in this way, a person loses vitality. So, now let's get back to what Kriya Yoga is, summarizing it. It is a psychophysical method that enables a person to engage in actions with full awareness, encompassing the mental, emotional, and physical levels. We touch upon vibrations connected to the body that operate at these levels. In essence, the physical body is the result of vibrations. The physical body is the sum of all vibrations. It contains all forms of energy. This is why our body exists in its current form. Kriya is an evolutionary method that enables a person to access cosmic consciousness and experience this knowledge personally in every cell. The body is thereby transformed. Naturally, a person's level of consciousness changes and their attitude towards life shifts. Kriya encompasses all aspects of life because we accept it as it is given to us, as a manifestation from above. We work with this, but inwardly, not outwardly. Kriya enables a person to understand the laws of the universe. When they grasp these laws, they do not violate them. Those who do not break these laws have positive karma. Consequently, life unfolds positively and is prolonged. In other words, life becomes longer. This is because the essence of life is realization. A person is given the opportunity to extend or accelerate this process and increase their life expectancy by applying a scientific method of transforming consciousness that works with neurons, the body, the mind, the five senses, and the brain hemispheres. I've gathered all of this information to provide a clearer picture of what we are working with as a whole. We work with the breath and the different aspects of the mind, such as concentration and perception. We transform consciousness. This process is called alchemy, when consciousness is transformed. Alchemy. Today, this alchemy exists within us as potentially accessible knowledge, with the capacity to activate the mechanisms that allow us to achieve this realization. Realized consciousness is consciousness realized within the cells. We have certain practices. To give you an idea, there are specific kriyas that enable us to immerse the consciousness of each cell in a superconscious state, allowing us to realize the highest potential within each cell. This is when the body's powerful alchemy occurs. In ancient times, this process was referred to as alchemical transformation and was sometimes called the philosopher's stone, which people sought after. In reality, the philosopher's stone is your mind. There is a lot to explore, but put simply, when we know where our philosopher's stone is, we can ignite the fire of higher knowledge without matches. This method works regardless of whether we have anything in the external world that radiates or assists us. This is the most important aspect. This is the science of Kriya. Then, during the process, this fire illuminates and purifies the body's consciousness on all levels. From the perspective of Vedic knowledge, this process is known as yajna or yagna. When we perform Kriya Yoga techniques, we illuminate the mind with divine fire and radiance. This radiance is then directed into the consciousness of each cell. At that point, our body transforms. In scientific terms, this is referred to as transformative power, the power of consciousness. Such consciousness inevitably enters the superconscious realm. The purer the mind, the less attachment there is, and the higher the level of consciousness. When I returned from the army after serving for 2 years, by the way, I recently visited some great places there. I realized that I needed nothing more from life because I had the most important task, to focus on self-development and self-improvement. So I began studying several disciplines at once. By delving deeply into these disciplines and practicing yoga, martial arts, and Qigong methods of transformative power, while also exploring various paths, including different religions, I found it relatively easy to unify all these disciplines under one higher knowledge. In simpler terms, I understood the unity of all paths and systems. Then I asked myself what the foundation of all this was. Intellectually and clearly, I understood that it is the Creator. But how does one approach Him? A method and direction must be chosen. It was not just the thought that kept me restless, but an inner calling that there is a universal system that is portable and mobile. I would even say that it is a condensed form of technology that would allow me to achieve liberation with a small number of techniques. I know that the simplest and most reliable path is chanting the name. People who practice yoga choose a name that embodies the attributes of the higher. Some traditions recognize between 99 and 108 names. The Vedas mention an infinite number of names because all names and forms are essentially one. Nowadays, science also points to a primary source for everything. It indicates that this primary source is alive, that it is manifested absolutely in everything everywhere, and that everything is light. Everything is the vibration of sound and light. It has even been proven to physicists, whom I now consider to be metaphysicists, that an atom as such is 99.999% light and has no solid properties. An atom is light, but we perceive it as a particle. I am now connecting the somewhat traditional yogic aspect with the scientific. When we look at an object, we define it. If we cannot see an object, it does not exist for us. This is how our consciousness and brain function. If I say that I am looking at you or someone else, or at the camera, then for me, this camera exists. But without me, it is just a vibration. If my consciousness does not perceive an object, then that object does not exist. This might be difficult to understand. There was an experiment which you may know about. It is now quite popular and is often discussed. Waves were sent out, and as soon as we focused our gaze, they transformed into controllable particles. This indicates that we have a significant influence on our body and consciousness. Understanding these things, I set myself on a path and began shaping it by focusing my mind on a higher goal. Then my surroundings began to change to suit my needs. Everything fell into place, and I gradually and step by step arrived at what I wanted to achieve. This process has taken quite a few years, but that is a very short amount of time compared to life itself and many other incarnations. I began practicing in 1989 and in a mystical way received knowledge about Kriya Yoga in 2002. I prayed day and night for this knowledge to be passed on to me. I turned to Babaji and Satya Sai Baba for help. At that time, they were separate entities to me, but now they are one. For the sake of clarity, I sometimes refer to them as Sai Babaji. They are essentially the same, the static and dynamic aspects of one absolute. This is a complex topic, and I won't delve into it now, but the fact is that in 1996 to 1997, I finally... You must understand that at that time, there was no internet or phones, and knowledge was scarce. In the early 90s, you could even be jailed for it, especially in the late 80s. I could only rely on my personal experience, intuition, and what I would call inner fate or providence. You clearly understand that you are being guided as soon as you reach out. I had a group of guys who were interested in different paths, and we would meet and talk. Interestingly, each person was engaged at their own level and understood what they wanted. Some didn't set themselves high goals, but I always had one high goal: liberation. Essentially, when asked, if you have attained enlightenment, what should you do next? I always say that you need to keep going. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. Why? Because knowledge is infinitely boundless. True freedom comes through freedom from knowledge. When you walk the path of knowledge, you must reach a point where you realize that you no longer need it. This indicates that you are fully formed. You have actually reached this realization at this moment. But behind this realization lies a creative life. Therefore, on this path, you will continue to learn. You will learn from everything you encounter. And I'm not just talking about this level. For example, I would say that the Creator who knows everything is perfect, as is the higher self. However, through us, the higher self learns about itself again and again. This freedom of action and choice enables it to gain a deeper understanding of itself. Through us, it is essentially learning and creating new universes. It turns out that we are participating in this process. Understanding this, I naturally kept my focus solely on the higher goal. Certain opportunities arose along the way. I helped my parents, started a family, and had a child, but we continued to move in this direction together. We dedicated a tremendous amount of time and effort to serving and helping people, which I would even describe as titanic. We practiced in parallel. But, just to give you an idea, my working day didn't end at night either. I could only practice at night, once everything had quieted down and my work was finished. I practiced for several hours at night and a few hours in the morning. During the day, I integrated Kriya Yoga into whatever I was doing. Teaching Kriya is, of course, a whole other chapter of my life. To be honest, I didn't want to become a teacher. My only goal was to attain liberation. I knew that this would take a lot of time, and that both teaching and personal practice would demand a significant amount of effort. However, people started approaching me. Whenever I traveled on public transport, I would usually sit at the back, facing away from everyone, and remain quiet until I reached my stop. Yet people would still come up to me. I believe this was providence at work. People were drawn to me. If I needed to get somewhere on time and started talking to someone who approached me in the city, I would end up being late. Interestingly, though, the people I was rushing to see often ended up being late as well. I realized that it was important to share something with that person at that moment. This happened everywhere and all the time. After receiving Shaktipat from Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba in 2003, this experience became even more intense, particularly following his blessing in Puttaparthi. Although this was my first physical stay in Puttaparthi, I should mention that Sai Baba had been appearing to me during interviews and in meditation for a long time, ever since I embarked on this path in 1989. That's another story in itself. There are many of them. I've had around 40 interviews, I would say, and each one was extraordinary. One could write a book about them. They are all connected to our realization and to my journey. Of course, I didn't want to teach. However, when I met a Kriya yogi who was a teacher from a different lineage to mine, the lineage of Yogananda, who was a disciple of Hariharananda, a highly accomplished individual, he invited me to join him as his student. He offered to teach me, suggesting that we practice together and spread the teachings. I held him in great respect. I had met many teachers. However, I humbly accepted his heartfelt invitation and told him that my teacher is Sai Baba, and that I cannot be anyone's student in this life. He accepted this with joy and a smile, saying, "Yes, yes, of course." He simply wanted my help. It turned out that many people had gathered around us, eager to practice spirituality. I sent them to various teachers. I said, "I am nobody here. There are officially recognized teachers. Go to them." I brought groups of people. They practiced and gained knowledge. I took groups to see different teachers. These teachers were quite advanced, and they really wanted me to stay with them. They wanted me to act as a bridge between Russia and India. In this sense, that is indeed the case. Culturally and spiritually, I find myself in a position where I connect India and Russia. This has been happening for many years. People are coming together. When directing people to various teachers, specifically Kriya Yoga teachers, I have always relied on the fact that I have a teacher, a Swami or a Bhagavan, thanks to whom I exist today. There have been times when I could have left this body, but he didn't allow me to, much like in the case of Babaji. I relied on the understanding that those receiving knowledge could encounter the tradition of their teacher directly. This is the parampara, but I am outside of tradition. Even astrology indicates that I am outside of tradition during this incarnation. By the way, this is my last incarnation, and my task is to complete it properly. I inevitably found myself working with people. Once, a teacher named Kriyananda approached me. He has since left his body. I collaborated with him, and he told me, "Babaji wants you to teach." I was meditating when I had a revelation. He had communicated with Babaji, who told him to tell me that I needed to practice Kriya personally, but also teach it. I responded negatively, saying that I didn't want to do it. In reality, I don't want to do it. I practice Kriya for its own sake, not for teaching. Teaching is very difficult and comes with a great deal of responsibility. I always feel sad when I see people who have only been practicing yoga for 2 weeks rush to start teaching. They don't understand what they're doing. Firstly, it's karmically unjustified and creates bad karma. Secondly, it's really bad karma. Thirdly, it's terrible karma. If something happens to someone, God forbid, you take on that responsibility. You don't know what the etheric or astral bodies are. You've only heard about them. But you don't control these processes. A lot can happen to people. Things can happen that you wouldn't even know how to deal with. What would you do if someone collapsed and went into a coma? You don't even know the basic resuscitation methods. I'm talking about those clever individuals who, after just a month of training, decide to become teachers. A Kriya or yoga teacher should have experienced samadhi, even if only for a moment. Only such a person can start teaching, beginning with the basics. Someone who has reached samadhi, even if just for a second, has traveled a significant path and knows a great deal. It's not just because they experienced samadhi for a moment. That moment is the culmination of their journey. They know a lot. And why would someone who has just started yoga begin teaching? They take it upon themselves, not to mention the things beyond human perception. Typically, that's where everything begins. If you can't see, feel, or understand these things, how can you teach them? Understanding this, I didn't want to do it. It wasn't because I was afraid, but because it's a responsibility. These are people, these are souls, these are incarnations of divine love. After a while, I was told again that I should teach, and this time it was serious. I said that I would agree, but only on one condition: that Bhagavan himself would oversee it personally and accompany me wherever I would go. That's how I began teaching. People started coming to the seminars of their own accord. We never advertised. We simply announced that we were holding a seminar here or there. The gypsy mail worked wonders. 10 to 15 people would show up. I organized a seminar in Moscow covering the costs of the venue, travel, and accommodation myself. Only 2 people attended, a pregnant woman and a man who practiced Qigong. I ran the full 2-day seminar with them. Regardless of how many people showed up, I knew that everyone who came was a messenger from above. It was important to them. Now, we have between 50 and 2,000 people. That's a significant number and a very large range. This comes with a great deal of responsibility. However, my main goal is to help people become the best they can be, not to do it for them. I share knowledge. My primary objective is for practitioners to be able to see changes within themselves as they progress, understand what is happening to them, and reach the level of their own inner master. It's not about teaching in the external world, but rather about allowing this master to guide them further. Our inner master is our intuition, our higher self, or that inner voice that guides us, or inward, if you will, or upwards, or however you wish to describe it. In simpler terms, we practice. I share experiences. I share them in such a way that people can gain opportunities for transformation and reach a level of transformation that they can control. However, we work together to find the master within. From that moment on, they are protected. Under the protection of the higher self. This means that whatever they do next, the master will neutralize anything that hinders them and provide whatever is necessary. However, to reach this point, one must at least engage in deep meditation. Until then, a teacher or master is needed. But as you know, I don't consider myself a master. I have never claimed to be a teacher. What I offer comes from the heart and is based on my personal experience. After that, people need to work on themselves. Our eyes and retinas perceive information from the outside world in a very limited way. We can only see a small part of what is out there. Our vision extends from here to there, but everything else remains unseen. Fortunately, consciousness evolution has advanced significantly in recent years. People have changed. They have begun to awaken. What I refer to as a quantum leap is related to our multidimensionality and perception. It's connected to our multidimensional understanding of our own nature. Therefore, the people who attend the seminar are brought there by higher forces. Providence or a higher will guides them, and they are ready. So, in answer to the question of why I provide 6 stages, when I asked Babaji about this, he told me, "Give as you were given. Everyone who comes will potentially be ready." No one is unprepared, not even someone in a wheelchair, because this is about consciousness. Ultimately, it comes down to the individual. Will they practice, or will they be lazy? Will they dedicate their entire life and every atom of their being to the higher self, just as I did? I didn't have time to rest. Honestly, I didn't want to because I was in such a state of acceleration. I had no peace of mind until the moment. I was always searching and practicing. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, I had to live in the world, support my family, and help my parents. There were many distractions, but I practiced until the moment I encountered Kriya. As soon as I gained knowledge of Kriya through Babaji's initiation and blessing, or Shaktipat, and began to rely on the guidance I received, based on my inner feelings and perceptions of the awakened knowledge within me, I understood what Kriya was. I even received guidance in a mystical manner. All of this brought me peace. I simply began to practice in that direction. I left all other methods behind. By letting go of everything else, I found more time to dedicate solely to Kriya. I realized that Kriya Yoga is a universal method that encompasses everything and every direction. However, I must say that I still greatly appreciate the methodologies of Taoism. I was very pleased to discover that Taoist practice originated with the Kriya Siddha Boganatar at that time. He was also known as Bogarnath or Boganath. He was a Kriya Siddha who left behind the knowledge from which the Taoist system arose, namely the I Ching. Lao Tzu, the so-called sage, is actually Boyang, who is also known as Boganathar. The Chinese recorded him as Boyang. Later, he became known as Lao Tzu, his pseudonym. He left behind knowledge of the I Ching. I now know that even Taoist practices are a result of Kriya. This is described in tablets and ancient treatises. I therefore felt calm about passing on this knowledge, confident that it is perfect and touches on absolutely all aspects of our being. It encompasses all systems and directions, including religions, because Kriya emerged as an original cosmic law. At that time, there was no religion. There was one law, which we are now beginning to understand. This cosmic law is not only about the physical cosmos, but also the spiritual cosmos, the entire hierarchy of light. Within this hierarchy of light, there is knowledge of Kriya. And within this knowledge exists the entire hierarchy of light, all the way up to the Absolute. Can you grasp how universal this all is? But how much we can grasp it all depends on us. When Babaji told me, "Give as you were given," I realized that people would come to me to practice through him. Prepared people would come. I began to give as I was taught. These 6 stages became my basic list of techniques. Certain exercises that we record and practice. I also possess the ability to transmit certain transcendental knowledge. This capability has developed through inner work. However, there are also 6 levels of consciousness that we explore. For example, at the 2nd stage, a student must fundamentally immerse themselves deeply enough to enter a state of concentration. This is known as dharana, or concentration. I present these 6 stages as technologies. By engaging in this practice, we start at these levels and move through the stages as techniques. We dive into the 1st level, then the 2nd, and so on up to the 6th. When people ask me about a 7th stage, they often fail to grasp that they must first master the first 6 stages, not merely study them formally, but immerse themselves in the process so that they learn to control the system. And at least master the art of breathing and mindfulness, keeping their minds still and free from wandering thoughts. Therefore, spiritual practice begins the moment you enter a state of mind control, even if just for a short time. Put simply, you must learn how to stop thinking. This is called a mental pause. Spiritual practice begins with a mental pause. People have become accustomed to constant thinking. Before they can remember one thing, they have already forgotten another. Thoughts jump around. A person hops from one image to another. Push all those images aside and remain just yourself. Stay alone with yourself. Embrace that state of emptiness, and then you will understand what spirituality is. Until that happens, spirituality does not begin to activate. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to emerge from that emptiness, so when I'm in a deep state, I even find it hard to speak. I have to force my body to talk because I am not my body. My consciousness may drift away, and communicating from there is very challenging. That's why sometimes I freeze, or I might make mistakes, not in meaning but in pronunciation, because my tongue gets tied. This is due to the state I'm in. But when the state is under control, yes, there might be some minor glitches in the body, but you are doing the work, you concentrate, and you return to the body. As consciousness, you are present in the body, and then you drift away from it. Sometimes there are moments when you just don't feel like it. The biggest challenge during a seminar is staying in your body and continuing the work. After all, in a deep state, you are not the body. Your consciousness is everywhere. It's not easy to make the body temple speak. This is also one of the elements of super ability. I know that masters who have reached samadhi cannot say anything because there is not much to say in that state. It is a field. When a person is in samadhi, they radiate this power and silently convey knowledge. So don't worry if you're wondering why there are 6 stages and it seems like so much. Yes, it really is a lot, but I have faith. Those of you receiving this knowledge are capable of carrying it. You are given exactly what you are ready for and can handle. And yes, some masters look at me askance, including various Indians. Why do I present Kriya in this way, revealing all the keys and knowledge and practically giving everything that can be absorbed? I simply don't want you to be held back on your evolutionary path. I don't want you to spend years practicing the basics of Kriya. I want people to reach realization more quickly. That's my task. I have no attachment to the system. I have no attachment to tradition. I have the right to teach it as I see fit, as Babaji told me. However, I do this in a way that enables people to truly absorb it. Clearly, mistakes can happen. Perhaps you didn't turn your foot correctly, or position your hand or body properly. That's trivial. The question isn't about that. All of these things can be refined and polished. The real issue is understanding. That's why at the end of the seminar, I present the theory of the divine or transcendental vessel, in which the essence of Kriya Yoga is revealed and transcendental knowledge is transmitted directly. So don't worry or doubt, just absorb the knowledge and practice. You are ready. Your bodies are ready for this rapid transformation so that you can move forward, because we have very little time. Other Kriya Yoga teachers have the right to give it out slowly. Yoga teachers in general have that right. Perhaps it's a commercial interest, God forbid, because when a person comes many times, they pay again. And that doesn't interest me. Of course, we have to give something in return. The law of exchange exists, after all, and people pay for the seminar. But this only happens once. After that, having received these 6 stages, a person has the opportunity to practice for their entire life, or for a certain number of years, until they are ready for the 7th stage. I offer the 7th stage once I see that a person is ready, and I don't charge for it. Although some dakshina is expected, a fee is also appropriate because the person is making an investment. They give, they invest, they take, they receive. You wouldn't go to a pharmacy and say, "Give me this medicine, I owe you nothing," for example. But here, I don't take anything. I also don't charge for consultations. This is an important point. It's my service, and I can operate it however I want. I have the right to charge, but I choose not to. For the seminar, however, I do charge, because it's the first step in the process, and it involves the individual giving something of themselves. They are ready to start working, and they need to make an investment. Unfortunately, money has become an extremely important part of life. Although it holds no true value, it has taken on great significance. The ability to earn money itself shouldn't be considered valuable, although this ability does come from a higher source. Nevertheless, there's a team, work needs to be done, and a venue needs to be rented, and so on. When people tell me the seminar is expensive, I respond, do you know how much money I've spent over the years teaching you and acquiring this knowledge? I gave everything. And not just me, but my whole family too. Back then I was traveling with my family. I spared no expense to acquire this knowledge. How can you hold back on something so trivial? We gave everything, yet people hesitate to part with even a small amount. This is due to certain beliefs. These beliefs, like manipulations, arise in this way. People shouldn't charge for spiritual knowledge. I don't charge for spiritual knowledge. There's plenty of it online, so feel free to study books or blogs if you can. Bloggers are sharing information. Get engaged. I don't charge for that. However, I do ask for a small amount in return for the life force and personal experience that I share with thousands of people. I give 1,000% more and take very little in return. So that's my service. Now, there's an important point to make about the lives and practices of people who have attended the seminar. During the seminar, everyone is happy, and there is a wealth of information. However, I sometimes feel that I give more than is expected. I speed up and stretch time, accelerate processes, and provide extra support. This depends on the audience. I sense the audience, perceiving it as a field of information, and I understand how to give in the moment. This is a personal matter for me. However, everyone receives exactly what they need, and this is connected to the 6 stages. When they return home feeling inspired and ecstatic on the first and second days, they realize they have touched the source. I'm not talking about myself here, but referring to their inner state of experience, because the soul truly rejoices and consciousness is clear. They connect with the source. So what should they do next? You feel great and think it's time to start practicing. Then the mind starts playing tricks on you, telling you, something amazing just happened to you. Let's take a little break and gather yourself. Nothing needs to be done right now. You can take your time and sort things out gradually, but be aware that these are tricks of the cosmic illusion. Your task is to solidify this knowledge and start practicing right now, because 2 days of the seminar already represent significant practice. You just need to keep pushing the cart and moving forward. By nudging and pushing, you accelerate the process. As I often say, it's hard to get a standing cart moving. The seminar will help you shift the heavy cart of your life. Now you have the opportunity to move forward with less effort. This energy will work for you for 6 to 9 months. You received it from me and through me. If you only start practicing after 9 months, you are welcome to join the seminar again. Rest assured that you will retain the knowledge and won't need to come back. I provided it so that people would not be dependent on me in any way, shape, or form. There's no need to chase after me. It's not about me at all. However, if you lack the emotional or mental strength to start working, and you have your notebook containing all the information, you are welcome to attend the seminar again. The energy will open up again, the portal will open, and you will receive even more energy. That's why people go to teachers. Students visit teachers. I don't usually tell people where to find me. We simply gather in a separate place for our retreat. The seminar is a short but powerful retreat. During the seminar, an initiation also occurs without any physical contact or ordination. Initiation happens without any external manifestation. This is my inner work, and anyone who attends the seminar is protected for several months and can begin this work at any time. For example, one person attended my seminar and then went to another teacher, a well-known master in India. When he asked for initiation, the master refused, saying, "You already have initiation. I cannot give it to you." He could see the initiation astrally and spiritually. With his spiritual vision, he could see that the person had the seal of initiation. The man was confused, saying that he hadn't received initiation from anyone. The master refused him several times. On the third day, when he asked again, "Please grant me initiation," the master replied, "You have initiation in Kriya Yoga." Incidentally, that master is still around. The guy said, "I haven't been initiated. I've only attended a seminar with Imram." The master replied, "That is indeed your initiation, and according to tradition, you should ask him for permission." This man then called me in tears, upset about the situation. He said, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was so serious. I thought it was just a seminar. What should I do now?" I told him, "Just say that you agree. He is a highly qualified master and a very good person, both as a master and a teacher. I'm really glad you went to see him. Please let him initiate you." He conveyed this to the master, who acknowledged it. The initiation remained, but he recognized that he had permission. After all, spiritually and telepathically, we are all connected. So the master granted him initiation in Kriya. That's how interesting things unfold. The seminar is a short, intensive retreat, whereas a retreat is a longer seminar. During the retreat, we have the opportunity to work deeply and dive into this sacred space, so to speak, to gain knowledge of our true self and higher self. The number of retreats a person needs is decided by the Creator. How deeply a person comprehends high knowledge depends on their sincerity, how genuinely they practice, their attitude towards life, and how deeply they honor and respect others, recognizing the divine in each person. It also hinges on their understanding of universal human values. I often speak about universal human values: Satya, Dharma, Prema, Shanti, and Ahimsa. Satya is the pursuit of truth, where all of one's being is directed towards understanding what the truth is. We know that one of the names of God is truth, the higher self as truth, as understanding. It's not just about the facts or understanding what is happening in this world. No, it's about being in communion with the Spirit, being in the Spirit. That is Satya. Dharma refers to duty, righteousness, and the correct understanding of life. This involves having the right attitude towards laws, including internal, spiritual, philosophical, and cosmic laws, as well as social and life laws. It's about respecting these laws. We cannot violate them because they were created by God Himself. It is only right to follow the rules of the game and to be sincere, honest, and truthful. The third aspect is prema, or unconditional love, which is very important. This is where a practitioner begins to feel compassion for every living being. They will never violate this law or cause harm to another person. Because behind prema is shanti, peace. Shanti represents peace and tranquility. A person in this state is calm. They are not aggressive, but harmonious. This state of being does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process, but one that can happen quickly. There is also the aspect of nonviolence, or ahimsa. Therefore, a person in a state of unconditional love would never break any laws or bend the rules, so to speak. They will not cause anyone harm, either mentally or physically. But most importantly, they must not harm themselves. A person who does not love themselves cannot truly love others. They must learn to love themselves because each of us is a manifestation of the higher self, regardless of what we do. So, my dear ones, if you want to realize your higher nature in this life, Make your life more beautiful. Enhance the lives of your loved ones, and ultimately ensure that our society, community, and humanity as a whole become leaders in the spiritual realm. Self-improvement is essential. This requires a unifying force, awakening intuition and control over the qualities that prevent us from remaining truly human. Above all, we must cultivate unconditional love and compassion for all living beings. I wish you all the best.